All right, what's up, guys? I am here with Garrett Porter, and I'm Basic Nerf, of course, and he is one of the organizers. Actually, he's the head organizer of Cal Poly Pomona Humans vs. Zombies. So, Garrett, for the first question, who is Garrett Porter? Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do for the game?
Well, I am a third-year computer engineering major. I started with Humans vs. Zombies my freshman year in Alamitos Residence Hall. We ran a small game after a friend had made the suggestion that we try and make one. And then after that, I just kind of ran with it. And the next year, I launched and ran a much larger scale campus-wide game that kind of brought HVZ to Cal Poly.
How many players did you have last game?
In the last game, we had over 350 active players by the end of the game. We had 600 or so at the beginning with just our basic registration, and then that kind of filtered down. So.
Ah, okay. Now, what made you want to bring Humans vs. Zombies to Cal Poly Pomona?
Well, as I was mentioning at my residence hall, my freshman year, I had a friend that had just kind of suggested it, and looked into it, and I thought it looked pretty cool and that I wanted to play. So I figured the only way I was going to get to do that is if I picked it up and started doing it. So that's what I did. Unfortunately, I still haven't been able to play, but a lot of other people have, so that's good enough for me.
That's a great mentality. If you guys don't know already, Cal Poly Pomona is a pretty much all Sox game. They have a ban on Nerf blasters. And Garrett, why is that, and what are the main reasons for that?
The main reasons for the ban on the Nerf blasters is that it's a really touchy subject with administration in terms of safety, in terms of how it's going to look to the rest of the campus, to people who aren't participating. Cal Poly has fairly strict administration in terms of what we can and can't do, and I think part of the fear is if they say yes, you can use Nerf blasters for this event, that will get other people thinking that that they can use them whenever they would like as well, which isn't necessarily the case. So I think that's a big part of it, as well as the whole stigma in terms of having weapons on a college campus, especially with the violence in the last couple of years. So.
Right, and he also mentioned that Cal Poly Pomona is a more conservative type of school.
Yes, that's also a contributing factor. When I was talking to my advisor for the game to set up the first event, that came up that that Cal Poly doesn't particularly like to be the first one to bring on a new social event. Prefer to do something that the other campuses have tried. So that's also a contributing factor.
Have you showed them all the stats though? Over 600 college campuses and schools in the USA alone have played it successfully.
Well, so far I haven't pushed it too hard. And the main reason is last game we didn't have a track record. We didn't know how many people we were going to have. We didn't know how well it was going to run. We didn't know what problems we were going to run into. We weren't even sure we were going to be able to do it completely safely with Sox. So we really wanted to get that under our belt at least, so people knew what we were, so campus had an idea what Humans vs. Zombies was and what it meant. So we didn't really push for that at that point. And now we're trying to see, from the last game we know there was a lot of people that wanted to play that didn't. So we were looking to see kind of what regular base we would have in terms of players, so that we could say, well, we had this many last time, we expect the same amount again this time. We ran fine with Sox and stress balls. We would like to try it with Nerf blasters. So it's really about trying to get that support from campus and get a large student body that will help push for it.
I see, that does make sense. How about blowpipes or blowguns? Are those allowed here?
No,
Look into
no,
them?
those even more so than Nerf blasters, we would have a bit of a problem with due to there's not a whole lot of way to distinguish that between, say, an actual blow dart gun or other weapon of that kind. Whereas a Nerf gun is brightly colored, it's extra large. You're going to identify one when you see one, as opposed to if you had a dart gun or something along those lines. It may be a little bit more difficult.
I see. Now, since Cal Poly Pomona is an all Sox game, I've used Sox in HPZ games. I like it a lot, but I've had trouble carrying a lot of them. Like, how do players carry around all their socks, and what do you think is a good amount to carry around?
Something that we saw last year was that people started making banisters or bandoliers, and all kinds of things. People had them just stuck to the back of the backpack, and just all over, and they would just pluck them off and throw them. Or they had the bandoliers across their chest or crisscrossed, and they just either had pouches or Velcro or just tape that was just stuck onto the bandoliers, where they had all of their socks just all over them. And those people were quite valued, because if you watch our video that we have from our last game, there's a segment where there's one guy that is in our old stables, and he takes out 6 zombies before he gets tagged. And the zombies are just all around him, and they're just coming in after him, and he just one after another takes them out. But they definitely found a way. The players definitely found a way to get the socks that they wanted. And I've seen people carrying anywhere from 3 to a dozen or more socks. So it's really in terms of how your play style is. If you prefer to be able to throw and go against zombies aggressively, or if your strategy is just to run.
That does make sense. So, I've seen, it seems like you've done a good amount of observation here with the player culture and the missions. So what would you say the player culture is kind of like, or what's kind of like the attitude of the players here? Like, maybe are they going into squads, or maybe they're playing more sneaky? What do you think is the overall culture?
Well, this was a really interesting thing to watch, from going from not having an HVZ culture on campus to watching one develop. Throughout the first game, our first mission or 2 missions, we didn't have a lot of organization in the human side. We watched that develop, because part of the way these missions are structured and the game structured as a whole is that the organizers, we don't interfere with how the missions are operated.
You guys don't play?
No, we say this is where you're going to start, and this is where we're having you meet. This is your objective. We may not even tell them where it is. We say that you have to go and find or get this thing, and then that's all they know. They have to go and track it down, get there, get the objective, and then they may have to do something else. With that objective, we had an escort mission last time where they had to go and find a doctor, which took them a while. Then once they found her, they had to go and escort her to another building. So it was really interesting to watch the squads develop and the leaders come up and take place and start really organizing it, because they realized that running around as just one giant mob without any particular direction was quite hazardous. And they lost quite a few people that way. But it was also interesting to watch the attachment to the leaders when the leader would get taken out. We had that happen at the end of one of our weekend missions, and the humans had gotten ambushed, and they took out one of the main leaders, and everybody's like, well, shoot, what are we going to do now? we don't know. We don't know what to do. So they all ended up scattering and saved themselves. But yeah, that was definitely an interesting dynamic to see.
Oh, it sounds extremely interesting. I would have loved to have watched it, or being here and seen it unravel myself, because I like looking at the intangibles and stuff like that. As the main organizer, but I'm sure you got mods on your team, right?
Yes.
But still, even with, well, I guess we should ask first, how many people are on your moderating planning team?
Well, for the first game, it was the main moderators. I had a few other side ones that helped in little ways, but for the most part, there was just 2 moderators, myself and a good friend of mine, Alex Baldwin. And him and I carried the whole load for the first one, and then for this coming game, we brought on an additional person to help split the load.
Okay, okay. So with your moderating team, and as you being head moderator, game organizer, how difficult is it to actually plan the missions?
The missions, the first year, or the first time I had planned those all myself with collaboration with a few other moderators, but I had written up all the documentation for it. It's a little bit difficult in terms of trying to figure out, well, here's a map of the campus, what can we do on it? Where can we have them go? How can we make it difficult but not too difficult? How can we make it still enjoying? How can we make it doing stuff that we can afford and stuff that we can actually do? So that's a bit of a challenge, but it's nothing too bad. This year we actually designated one of our moderators just to working on missions, because we're having some other campus groups get involved on specific missions.
Cool.
So we have our disaster preparedness group on campus that's going to be working with one of the missions. And I don't want to spoil anything, but we also have the Amateur Radio Club. We're looking at having them be part of a mission, but that's as far as I'll get on that.
Oh man, that sounds super exciting. I like the creativity you guys got there, and definitely a way to include other clubs. Like, side note ramble here, but activities like this, specifically with Nerf and HVZ, because I've been into that a lot. I feel like it's a lot of fun, but I also like a lot that you can it brings different people together, and it bonds them, and you form different kinds of friendships.
Definitely, and that's one of the things that we wanted to do. We saw after the first game had started that we had a lot of people that became all of a sudden super interested in HVZ. We actually had some groups wanting to run their own HVZ since we weren't running it the next quarter. And it took a lot of time to convince them that that wasn't particularly the best thing to do. So when we were laying out the plans for this quarter's HVZ, that was one of the things we looked at, was how can we include other groups in this, so we can get even more campus involvement.
I see. How much planning would you say goes into setting up each game?
It's a fair amount of planning, and it's always things that just kind of pop up and sneak up on you. In order to get the first game running, the first campus-wide one, it was a year from when I decided I wanted to try and do it till.
From the dorm to the
from the dorm to campus wide, it was a full year worth of time to get it all planned, to get in contact with the right people, to get everything put together and working. And now we've cut that down to less than 6 months.
Nice.
So the planning is it gets kind of exponential. When you start out, it's an hour or so a day. Maybe you're just writing up some documents, making up the mission plans, talking about what you would like to do. And then as it gets closer and closer and closer, getting the shirts designed, getting the bandanas done, getting the ID cards all ironed out. This year we also started our new website. So I've been working real closely with our web developer to get our website up and running. And we've had some growing pains there. So as it gets closer and closer, it becomes more and more time intensive, to where once the game goes, it's almost 24 hours a day in terms of demand on the moderators.
So it sounds like it's not hard, just time consuming.
Yeah, there's nothing that's particularly a big challenge in terms of doing it. It's a lot of time, it's a lot of things to do, and it's a lot of stuff that isn't particularly defined. There's no form that I'm going down that says, oh, do I have this, do I have that, do I have this other thing, because we're still at the point where it's fairly new and we're still trying to figure out everything we have to do. That was definitely one of the things that made the first one take so long, is we were just coming up, oh, what if we did this, what if we included this, do we need to do this? All of those types of things that made it take a bit longer.
A lot of variables.
A lot of variables, exactly.